I think franchising is the most overlooked path to wealth creation in America. It makes entrepreneurship and ownership a lot more accessible to the everyday person. $600 million a year. And this guy started from zero. This can be what you want it to be. It can be empire building, or it can be a ones and twosy type thing that kicks off a couple $100,000 a year for you, but still puts you into a better position in life financially. And more importantly, doing something that's fulfilling, rewarding, and yours, not someone else's.
It's a blueprint for success. It's proven.
With this business's case that I'm mentioning, their average revenue is $2.6 million per person.
Holy cow.
Off of a business that might have cost them $5,000 to get started.
I want to hear from you your 3 favorite franchise concepts today that the average Joe could afford to buy into, but still profit hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, if not more.
Yeah, let's do it.
A lot of people out there don't feel like they're ready for full-fledged entrepreneurship, or at least they don't feel like they can take the risk to be an entrepreneur and completely work for themselves. And a lot of people out there also don't want a boss. They don't want to clock in and out every day. They're looking for something in between. And in my opinion, franchising is one of the best ways you can do that. You still have accountability. You have someone holding your hand, pointing the way, giving you a proven blueprint and framework to follow, which reduces your risk while still retaining a bunch of upside. But you're a business owner. You own equity. You own your time. It's kind of the best of both worlds in a lot of cases. And the vast majority of franchises can be funded with an SBA loan, which carries up to 90% financing. So if the startup cost for a franchise is $100,000, you can get $90,000 of that financed. And if you don't have $10,000, you can get friends or family to finance that. So today I had my friend Alex on. All he does is look at franchise opportunities for a living. And I said, Alex, bring me your 3 best franchises that are very approachable, affordable, but still can scale to millions of dollars a year in revenue or profit. And he did not disappoint. I was shocked by how much these random franchises make. So let's dive right in. Okay, Alex Smersnak, welcome to the Koerner Office. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Chris, appreciate you having me today. I'm Alex Smersnak, originally from Minnesota, based here in Charlotte now, but I am a serial entrepreneur. I started back in college, went to Wake Forest, did a laundry and dry cleaning business in college that I ran, grew, and sold for mid 6 figures. Went and did the corporate thing for a year and a half at Ernst & Young and hated it. I was like, this is not fast enough. It's not mine. It's not fulfilling. I need to do something entrepreneurial again. So I started another laundry company in 2016 when you were seeing all the Uber for X businesses like Instacart, Shipt, Wag, Rover. Scaled it to about 18 million a year in revenue and started franchising part of that business. So we built physical laundromats to support all of the delivery business and realized we got to open hundreds of these and laundromats aren't cheap. So we started franchising part of it in 2021. Sold 118 locations in about 14 months, got a crash course on franchising, ended up hiring a CEO so that I could go work on what I'm working on now. And that is a platform like Zillow that helps people identify due diligence, find lenders for the right franchise businesses to get into, whether that's a 20 grand a business to get into or a $2 million business to get into. Our goal is to help create the next generation of entrepreneurs through the franchise business model.
Okay. And that's exactly why I wanted to have you on, because I've talked to a lot of franchisors, right? A lot of people think of franchise as a franchisee. You buy into a system, but franchisors are the ones that are the system. So I've talked to a lot of franchisors that are tunnel vision focused on their business and they love it and it's the best thing ever. And I get it because that's how business owners are. But you are more agnostic about individual franchise concepts, but you're very passionate about franchising in general as a path to build wealth. So I wanted to have you on because you just have a lot of surface area. You have a lot of experience with franchising and building wealth with franchising. And I want an unbiased take from you. Sound good?
100%. I think franchising is the most overlooked path to wealth creation in America. And the reason I feel that way, I used to be a skeptic, to be honest. I think people hear franchising and they think, oh, it's McDonald's, it's Subway. It's going to cost me millions of dollars to get into, or it's these like snake oil salesmen of people that only have 1 or 2 units open and it's not proven and it's not going to work. The reality is those are the goalposts. Those are the ends of the spectrum, and there is thousands of other concepts in between that are very viable, do produce good revenues, cash flow, can replace your income, can lead you on a path to empire building. It's really about identifying the right opportunity, just like you would a side hustle or an independent business. franchising is just a business model that is layered on dozens and dozens of other industries, from home services to health and wellness to food, fitness, and everything in between.
Yeah. I feel like there are three buckets of franchise concepts. There's like the well-established, mature ones like McDonald's. You're going to have to pay multiple seven figures to get involved. And then there are so many brand new concepts where one guy started a business and it went well, so he spent way too much money to franchise it. And statistically speaking, you'll probably agree, most of those will fail, right? They just will fail. And then there's the third bucket, which let's call the future crumbles, right? And that's probably a very small percentage. I'm not trying to misrepresent. Like there's a very small percentage of franchise concepts that are the next crumble, the next Batteries Plus, Planet Fitness, et cetera. I assume that those are the ones that you're interested in and trying to kind of turn people on to. And no one knows for sure. We can't see the future, but certainly there are indicators like, multiple six figures of profit per territory or per location. What are the other metrics that you look for in an early franchise concept that's late enough to have a proven track record, but not so late to where there's not any money left to be made?
Yeah, so I almost start with the individual, and something that took me a little bit to realize is, yours and I's risk tolerance might be very different. Yours and I's operational background and skill set might be very different. Our financial goals are very different. So all those things factor in, because some people come to me and they say, just show me the brands that make the most money. And they're very financially motivated, and that's fine. A lot of people come and say, hey, this is a legacy for my kids. I hate my job. I'm not trying to become a multimillionaire. I just want to replace my W-2 income, which is 150 to 250 grand a year. Show me the options that do that. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, that will do that. They might not be the McDonald's that can produce $700,000 in profit per box and have this empire building upside, but they're this steady, relatively affordable to get into. You've got a playbook, you got a peer group that can replace that 150 to 250K income. So I start with the individual of what do you want? What's your risk tolerance? What are you good at? And then we start to look at, all right, they're very risk averse. They need a more mature brand. So let's find one that has over 80 units, 100 units already open, because that is a really good indicator of system strength. If they have staying power, they've been around for 5, 10 plus years, they've got near 100 or over 100 franchise locations open, it is usually a good sign that they have the systems, the playbook, the market figured out, and there's product market fit and ability to create value for the franchisee. And now, if you're less risk averse and you want all the upside, you want to empire build and carve out territory in your market, whether that's Cincinnati or Dallas or wherever it may be, you want to get in earlier, but you're going to take more risk to do that. But you've carved out and protected territory. So it really is this. It's not one size fits all, and you really have to understand the individual and then fit them and match them to the right brand. And that's a big driver of what we're trying to do at Franzi, is use AI to make that more accurate and straightforward.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people would be surprised to learn how much some franchises make and how little others make. I remember learning that an average Subway nets $30 grand a year, and you really can't make money unless you own 10 Subways.
Right.
What a miserable business! 10 Subways with 100 employees. No, thank you. And then I learned that a Batteries Plus makes 300 grand a year. Or my missed opportunity franchise story was 2010. I was living in Huntsville, Alabama, which is right near Tennessee, and Planet Fitness started coming on my radar. And I had a guy that would fund me buying into Planet Fitness. I didn't have any money. I was broke, but they had 0 locations in the state of Tennessee at the time. Nashville, Memphis. And I'm like, dude, I could be the guy to open Planet Fitness in Tennessee. And I wasn't, obviously, but I think the Planet Fitness is net 500 to 600 a year each.
Easily. And the multiple. That's the other thing people don't think about is when you go to exit that business, let's say it was Planet Fitness, because there's such a now mature brand, they've got stability, predictable cash flow, private equity and these larger multi-unit operators look at them, and banks as well, look at them as significantly de-risked. And so they put a premium on the multiple they would pay. If it was Chris and Alex's gym, that might trade at 3 to 4x EBITDA or multiple of cash flow. But if it's a Planet Fitness, it might be 5 to 6, 5 to 7, and you get 2 to 3 whole turns on your exit that you wouldn't get in an independent business. And people, I think, discount that when they look at the model as well.
Yeah, people think that those high multiples are only for the franchisor, and they're there for the franchisor for sure, right? Crumble's $1 billion business, but groups like a franchisee with multiple territories.
A mumbo. I call it a mumbo. It's a multi-unit, multi-brand operator.
Okay. All right. So they can chase high multiples too.
Yep.
You're saying.
And honestly, even the individuals.
If it's a mature brand.
Yeah, if you and I own
Yeah.
two Planet Fitnesses, we might get a slight premium on the exit. If you and I own 5+ though, you're now in that same range as the guy that owns 15. I mean, Orange Theory at its peak
Wow.
Was trading at like 19x EBITDA as a fitness studio. You know what I mean? Like that's like a SaaS or a software multiple on a gym.
Crazy.
But it's because they look at it as like, all right, you've got diversification across this larger number of units. You have this brand that's cult-like, it's cult-like following and loved across the country. And there's proven playbooks and systems and technology they're building. And, because of all that, it's de-risked and we will pay a premium for this predictable stream of cash.
Okay, so I want to hear from you your 3 favorite franchise concepts today, starting with 3, ending it with your all-time favorite that are approachable, affordable, that the average Joe could afford to buy into, but still hope to profit hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, if not more, per territory or location.
Yep.
Can we do that?
Yeah, let's do it. So I like that you said accessible too, because that was a theme I think that I and many others stereotype and think like I have to be incredibly wealthy to do this. And what I like about franchising is it makes entrepreneurship and ownership a lot more accessible to the everyday person. You don't need to be Elon Musk. You don't need to be Zuckerberg to go build significant wealth in business, and in franchising as a way to do that.
When we talk about each concept, I'm going to ask you, like, how viable is this business opportunity for someone if they wanted to just do it outside of a franchise concept with no support, just do it on their own? I want to ask you at the end of each one, how viable would this be for someone to do on their own? Because some people might just hear the concept and think, that's genius. I don't think I need the help. And they may actually need the help. They may not. They may have a lot of experience in that space and they might want to save a little money. So I'd like to hear how viable any of them would be for someone to go solo on.
Yeah, let's do it. Cool. I love that. Yeah. So the first one that I think comes to mind for me is private insurance adjusting business, which a lot of people don't think about as a franchise model. You might think of, I don't know, again, food or fitness or something else. This is what I love about franchising. What always surprises people is it touches everything. And so in this one, it's insurance adjusting. Only 1% of current insurance claims use a private adjuster. And what a private adjuster does is they go to the insurance companies and they kind of bully them or beat them up a little bit, right? Like they want to help you get more money for the damage that happened to whatever asset it is, whether it's fire or water or hail damage. And in most cases, they can increase that claim by 747% or so. So they actually, let's say $2,000, they'll go get you 17 grand. And on your behalf, will go and negotiate with these different insurance companies. And their revenue, monetization or their model is they take a flat percentage of the total claim. So they're incentivized to go get as much as they possibly can. And it's simple, right?
Let me make sure I understand this correctly. If I get in a car crash, I use Liberty Mutual. I call my guy. He's like, yeah, we'll give you $5,000 for this fender bender. I go to the franchise, my local franchisee for this company, and say, hey, Liberty Mutual wants to give me $5,000. And he says, I'm on it. Let me be your adjuster. He comes back, gets me 12, and he gets paid a percentage of the entire 12 or of the delta between the 5K and the 12K?
So it's of the entire 12, but they set minimums. So I think because you don't want to hire this person, you were already going to get 5 and then they get you 6 and you're like, okay, what was the point? I didn't make anything incremental. But in your example, if they go get you, even if it's 8, they'll take 10%. So they'll make $800.
They'll cap it.
Yeah. You netted $7,200. You still made $2,200 more than you would have by not hiring this person. And a lot of people, I think, don't realize that this is even a service, which is why I think it's such a big opportunity in a big market. Again, 1% of claims are actually using a business like this. And so I think there's a lot of white space for a brand to come in and make it more well-known, make it more education around it. But it's easy to get into as an individual, into the system. You don't need a bunch of overhead. You don't need a ton of money to get started. Their franchise cost for this is $43,000. So if you borrow money to do this, you might only need $5,000 to get started.
Wow. And you could borrow money from a bank or from friends and family, like 90% in this case? Yeah.
So the SBA is meant for exactly this reason. One of the things that the U.S. government does really well is they want to support entrepreneurs. It's the backbone, of our economy, of our society. And so SBA loans, especially under $200,000, are very accessible. You need to show that you have some sort of collateral, whether that's a home or another asset, or some sort of W-2 income or income from the business that you can prove that you'll be able to pay the loan down as you're scaling the business. But more often than not, they're very willing to help people get started for businesses exactly like this.
So SBA loans are not just for like funding a current business or for buying someone else's business. You can use it to buy into a brand new franchise concept.
Yeah, brand new. Like, they love franchising because of the reasons we mentioned. Hey, it's de-risked. There's all these other units we can look at and see how they're doing. And so, with this business's case that I'm mentioning, the adjuster business, they've got a bunch of existing operators, and their average revenue is $2.6 million per person off of a business that might have cost them $5 to $10,000 to get started.
Holy crap. Okay, so 2.6 million in revenue to the average franchisee, and you can get started for $5 to $10,000, assuming you get an SBA loan to fund 90% of the down payment. What is the profit on that 2.6 million?
Yeah, so typical gross margin, because it's such a low overhead business, is 70 to upwards of 90%. And then depending if you have a sales team or if you start hiring other folks to help with, reaching out to other customers and working with the insurance companies, you can net 25 to 45% of that revenue.
Holy crap. I mean, let's say, like $700,000 profit, $800,000?
Yes. For the better operators, yeah.
I'm sure you have to work into that, right? Like, you got to ramp up to that average number, few years?
Yeah, a few years to ramp for sure. And the thing about franchising is it accelerates that ramp. If it was, me doing this on my own, I need to go figure out insurance law and build relationships with the claim companies to build a brand. I have to establish myself. And what these franchise brands can do is they give you the branding, the playbook, the systems, the relationships they already have regionally and nationally with these different companies. So it's more plug and play. It doesn't mean that you're rich immediately and your year one is $2 million, but your year one is substantially higher than what it would have been had you done it on your own.
And in this case, is the franchisor feeding you leads? Is it support? What all are they providing you?
Yep. So they'll provide you with leads. They'll give you a lot of like AI and data-driven tools that they've built in-house, because they're pooling the resources. All the franchise fees that they collect and the royalties, for the most part, get plowed right back into the business to build technology, to invest in brand, marketing and lead gen.
Do individuals need like insurance experience or background for this particular franchise?
Not entirely. It's like the franchise brands are great, again, about doing training, getting you licensed if there's licensure requirements.
Okay. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being impossible, 10 being easy, how viable would this same business idea be for someone to do on their own, not in a franchise concept?
Yeah, so because of how regulated insurance is, and I think how credibility based it can become, I mean, you're dealing with people at a pretty tumultuous time in life. If their house just got severely damaged or another asset, they really want to make sure that it's someone that has a background in it or has a track record or has a brand behind them. So for that reason alone and the regulation, I would give it a 3 or maybe a 4 to do on your own. You don't have the carrier reputation. Yep. You don't have the weather-driven data system. You don't have the proprietary lead engine built out. So you're starting from scratch in all those spots, versus with the brand, you've got the technology that they've built in that backing, the national positioning, built-in systems, et cetera, to get started on square 3 instead of square 1.
It's interesting because like the less viable a franchise is for someone to do independently, I think that's like the more of a moat that franchise has. Because if we were looking at like a poop scooping franchise, which there's a half dozen of those or so, it might be an 8 out of 10, right? Like anyone can go start picking up dog poop and find a customer for that. But that means their moat is like a 2 out of 10. That's the trade-off that you make, right?
100%. Yeah, I like when there's some sort of skilled labor or a brand advantage or a supply chain advantage or some curriculum advantage that's hard to replicate. So if you look at like Planet Fitness or some of these other large brands, they have one of those moats built in, and it's harder to do on your own. And that's why franchising in that case should exist and should be successful in that case. If it's, to your point, no moat, no barrier to entry, you really have to question, am I better off just doing this on my own or not? Yeah.
All right. So that's your third favorite. What's your second favorite right now? That's approachable to all.
Yep. So second favorite is one that is, let's call it a home services platform They help you as a home buyer, or sorry, as a home seller, prep your house for selling it. And they have all this data that suggests if you do like slight improvements, maybe it's like a small bathroom remodel or some new paint on the exterior or a new garage door even, they've priced in all of these things that will generate a higher sale price. And so you might pay them 5 to 15K to make some of these improvements and clean everything, get it prepped and staged, but also some light renovations. You'll pay them 5 to 15 grand to do this, but you'll likely get 2 to 3x that back in the form of what you sell your home for. So I like that as a business because it's, again,
That's smart.
low to get into, less than 150K. On the low end, it's 110K. So if you borrow money, again, you're into it for 10 to 15 grand. And the average revenue of this business is $2.7 million a year. So
Holy cow.
You're in a market where people are always buying and selling homes, even when things are a little tighter. They might not be buying as high of a frequency or at as high of a price point, but people are still selling homes.
What I love about businesses like this is that it's high ticket. So you say 2.7 million, and that's a lot of money objectively. You divide it by 15,000, which could be their average ticket price, and that's 180 customers, which is like one closing every 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, I could wrap my mind around that.
Yeah, if you get relationships with all the brokers and the real estate agents, it's like you're the guy, you're the business that they go to help improve this and increase the chance of selling the home.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to crunch the rough numbers, and in the city I live in, there's probably like 40,000 homes because there's 100,000 people, 2.5 people per home, 40,000 homes. Let's say they live in them 5 years on average. So divide that by 5, 8,000 homes are sold every year here in like a modestly sized suburb city. 8,000 homes are sold a year. So in order to make 2.7 million with this franchise in this one city, not like all of North Dallas Fort Worth, but this one suburb, you'd have to sell like 2% of those homes. You'd have to like be touching 2% of those homes sold per year to make 2.7 million. That sounds very feasible.
Yeah. And it's a need. It's something that people have to do, and they want to increase their sale likelihood and sale value. Some people are probably spending 30K, 40K with this business to make improvements to generate 70K and 80K in additional home value.
Yeah. Well, this is a lot like the one you just talked about, the insurance adjuster one, because all of the incentives are aligned, and it's almost like a service that quote unquote no one's paying for, because the homeowner's about to make a lot of money on their home. Statistically speaking, the majority of homeowners in the United States today have decent equity in their home. That's a fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on the whole, the person's about to make 5 or 6 figures on their home. And the bet is the gamble, which no one can really prove if it's fully true or not, because you don't know what that home would have sold for if the garage door weren't painted. So that's also in the benefit of the franchisee, because you can't really prove definitively that $2,000 new garage door will return $4,000. It's just like based on studies and estimates or whatever. So like no one's really paying for it. The buyer isn't, the seller isn't, but the franchisee is still making money because it's an investment, and it's an investment you make at a time when you're about to make money. And if I were to bet, they probably have like, pay later options where you can pay at close. Mm-hmm. Is that true?
Yeah, some of the businesses will allow you to do things like that. They'll get clever on pricing and incentives like that. It just depends on the brand.
Yeah, because a lot of people, like, even if they're about to make 50 grand on selling their home, and these improvements are going to cost 15 grand, they might not have that in their checking account, right? So they might need to like bank on paying at the closing table.
Yeah. And the other value of it too is, if you think about this, imagine you're selling your house and you have to do some of this, and you have an electrician involved and someone to do drywall and someone to do, maybe there's some plumbing work. And now you or your real estate agent are trying to coordinate all these subcontractors and different people, versus this is just one person. It's like the whole like one throat to choke kind of thing. It's like, hey, we hire this company. They then, as the franchisee of this business, you're the one responsible for subbing this out. You're not actually doing the work yourself. So some people hear about these businesses and they're like, wait, I don't know how to do these renovations or electrical work.
No,
you're
like, just the general contractor.
You're the GC and you're project managing it. And as you build the business, you've got a bench of people. It's like, oh, I got this electrical guy. I've got this plumber, I've got this patchwork guy. And it's like you've got a team that you can call on, and for certain jobs who you'd pull in and who you wouldn't, and you become effectively, like you said, a GC or a project manager.
Yeah, this is a beautiful business because it's just like a handyman business framed as like a increase the value of your home business at a time when you're about to make a lot of money from selling your home. It's just perfect. Like it's a handyman business dressed up like a increase the value of your home business.
Yep.
What are the margins on this business on average?
Yeah. So the gross margin for this business is anywhere from 40 to 50%. Net margin is 12 to 22%, depending on, again, how you're able to negotiate materials and the work from the subcontractors, as well as the pricing structure with the seller. Because I think, again, some of these folks will do a percentage of the incremental value that they can generate. They'll get clever on some of that pricing structure as well.
Yep. So this is probably the perfect business for someone that's in the real estate space, that's a broker, that was a broker, that knows brokers or agents, commercial, residential, someone with construction experience, general contracting experience. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 impossible, 10 extremely viable. How viable could this business idea be for someone to start on their own and not within a franchise concept?
Yeah, so this one I think is a little easier to do on your own. Don't get me wrong, the operation's a little bit more complicated than the insurance adjuster business we talked about. I also think like ex-military people would be great at this, or people that have managed teams before, because of all the project managers essentially in corporate America who have had to manage a lot of moving parts and different deliverables and timelines, and a lot of communication being involved and direction. And so for people with those backgrounds, I think much easier, maybe a 7 or even an 8. But for the average person, I'd say a 6 or so. The thing that the franchise has in this case is they've got referral playbooks and relationships with regional and national agents and real estate agent systems, and some of those larger
referrals,
ones like Keller Williams and Sotheby's and Allen Tate, et cetera, et cetera. Same with sourcing the subcontractors. They've got some relationships built in there. Pricing frameworks, brand positioning, with the brokers, et cetera. So like those again are those like cheat codes or shortcuts that you get, but not impossible to do this on your own. I think you probably, in most of these cases, save yourself a year, maybe 2 of headache by joining a franchise system and having that franchisor in your corner, as well as the peers that are in different territories sharing best practices and lessons learned.
Man, I really like this because I wasn't even really thinking of the realtor angle. I used to have a house cleaning business that only went through realtors. And our thesis was realtors have a lot of surface area. They have a lot of touch points for multiple homes. And they're incentivized for that home to be clean when it's shown and when it's sold. And they don't have to pay for it. They just refer it to the homeowner. And so it's actually a very similar business, just much, much smaller ticket size. And I love that too, because the realtor is like the referral source. They're like, dude, you got to pay for this because it's going to increase the value of your home and it's going to make my commission go up a little bit too. So like everyone's incentives are aligned and the realtor acts like a salesperson for you. And if you get a high volume realtor on your team, like that could be dozens of closings a year.
Yeah, and that becomes your sales engine. The more of those relationships you have, they're just constantly drumming up the business for you.
Yes. Okay. That's a banger, but that's not number one. What's your number one? And then let's have a little bonus round after that.
Let's do it. So my number one is let's call it a specialty home improvement business. They do, of all things, window boxes, custom window boxes, outside of your garage or your windows on your house. They design them. They make it look good, aesthetic to your home.
Like planters?
Like the flower window boxes, and they decorate them. They replace flowers in them. So like they'll do things like for Valentine's Day, they might put red flowers in with like some garland, not garland, but like other Valentine's Day themed designs. At Christmas, at Easter, they'll do that. So every month there's this recurring subscription revenue. And as you can imagine, again, you don't have a storefront. There's not a lot of overhead. You might have, kind of an operations, let's call it center, where you've got some of your materials and supplies and plants, et cetera, that you might be holding before you go do these installations with your customers. The investment cost is under 140 grand. So if you're borrowing money, 14 to 15K to get in, but the average revenue is $4.5 million a territory.
What?
For doing window boxes.
For window boxes?
Window boxes and planting flowers.
Crap? Okay, so let me make sure I understand. This company goes in and they probably charge thousands to install these planters and window boxes. They probably charge like per window. And then they've got a subscription model where, they load in the dirt on day one, they load in some flowers, and then every quarter, every month, they're swapping out flowers or they're fertilizing the flowers, watering them. Is that accurate?
You're very close. So there's 2 revenue streams. One is the installation, like you said, and it is in the thousands of dollars on average per ticket. They charge per window. And then there's this recurring subscription, and they have, as you can imagine, all sorts of add-ons. Do you want new flowers every month? Do you want them less frequently, flowers that will have, longer life, or do you want this variety based on the season and the month? And then they will do these decorations, as I mentioned. They'll have like kind of fun little like trinkets and like character like designs in addition to the flowers based on, if it's Easter month or Christmas or Thanksgiving, they'll have it themed to, that month or that time of the year. Their average revenue per customer per year is around $1,300, and it ranges from $1,300 to $2,200 a year per customer. And it's just this route based thing where they are going around each home and replacing flowers on a fairly regular basis.
Dude, I can't let my wife listen to this episode. She will buy this like yesterday, or she'll buy a franchise if it doesn't exist already here. She already has like a every 2 weeks flower subscription. It's like, that's a lot of money, but I love her. Anyway, is this going to be the first to go in a recession? Or I'm just shocked that this is so big of a business per territory.
So my last business, the laundry business, we used to get asked that question a lot. I was like, is this recession resistant? And we got a taste of a little bit of that with, COVID and, a few other years that we were operating. And we found that it was more affluent households that I think pay for things like laundry. And I think honestly, this service falls into that category. And while those houses aren't fully isolated from recessions, they're definitely more recession resistant, and they will keep spending money on things like this because it brings them joy, happiness. It gives their house character, and in some cases they kind of set it and forget it, and they're not necessarily thinking about it. So I imagine, laundry is more of a need than this is, but if it operates somewhat similarly and it's the same customer demographic, I could see some some staying power.
Well, it's depressing, but the data shows that the middle class is shrinking. And so to your point, if it's the upper middle class that's paying for this, they're probably going to be mostly okay during a recession. Okay, so what are the margins on this? 4.6 top line. And I will say to those listening, like, these revenue and profit numbers are not like BS pulled out of our butts. Like, this is federally like regulated. Like, these companies have to publicly report their franchisor, like their corporate owned location revenues and their franchisee revenues. So these are real numbers.
Yeah. So the numbers that I'm pulling are from what's called an FDD, a franchise disclosure document. Each franchise is regulated by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and they are required to every year update their FDD with the number of units they've sold that have shut down. Why did they shut down? Are there any ongoing lawsuits or litigation? Is there any bankruptcy that was claimed in the system? So you can see the health of the individual franchisees in the system as a result. They also have what's called an Item 19. The Item 19 is where they have audited financials, where they show revenue numbers, they show margin, they show financials. Similar to a public company's filings, quarterly filings, you do need to look for footnotes where they have some sort of like adjusted EBITDA or adjusted, revenue numbers. And so for those listening, I would just be cautious as you look at Item 19s and FTDs to be aware of, look at the footnotes and make sure you're getting the whole set of information. But the data that we're sharing today are is directly from those FTDs.
Yeah, if I were seriously considering a franchise, I would take that whole FTD, and those are like hundreds of pages, upload it to Claude or ChatGPT and be like, all right, cut through the noise. Like, what are the red flags, yellow flags, green flags here? That's got to be so valuable.
100%.
Okay, so 3 great options. Do you have any any wild cards for me that are worthy of mentioning?
Yeah, so I've got one or two. One that I personally am fascinated by. It's these artificial turf businesses that are starting to pop up. You see them a lot at gyms will put artificial turf in. You'll see them at hotels or multi-unit condo or apartment buildings. And now you're seeing a ton of single-family homes just say, hey, I'm sick of maintaining the grass, and I want somewhere for my kids to play their sports and the dogs to run around. And it's just it's not something to think about. And so they're doing away with natural grass and putting in this artificial turf into their backyards and in some cases front yards. And then you've got cities like Vegas where they're starting to essentially outlaw the growing of natural grass because of the water consumption that it has. So in Las Vegas proper, you're not legally allowed to grow actual grass anymore. It was actually this year, starting in 2026. And I think you'll see a couple other cities where water is less abundant, and maybe Florida, California. And so some of these local laws requiring that. What are people going to do? Do they put rocks or do they put turf, or what do you do to have some sort of green and something that makes you feel like nature and feel good about it? And so these turf businesses have started to do, really well. And same thing, they're less than 150K to get into, and in many cases will produce over $2 million a year in revenue, and 3 to 400 grand in profit.
Wow. Now, I forgot to ask you, what are the margins on the window boxes business?
Yeah, so the gross margin on the window business, because it's a lot of dirt and plants, and because, as you can imagine, they're marking that up a decent amount. The gross margin is very high. It's 60 to 65%. The net margin, because of the labor you will hire to go install the boxes, to swap out the plants, it's a lot of kind of manual labor, will eat into some of the rest of that margin. You're left with a 20 to 25% net margin, which is still great for a services business.
Yeah, I mean, over $1 million a year per location in profit. That's crazy on flowers. Jeez Louise. Okay, last wild card. What do you got?
Yeah, so then another one that I think is more accessible that many people can get into are some of the like office cleaning or commercial cleaning businesses. Those are very accessible financially. They're 50K, 60K to get into, and they'll set you up with all sorts of tech to drive leads from Airbnb accounts to businesses to single family homes, and you're effectively running a residential short-term rental cleaning business. Average revenues for this are 1.26 million, 6K to get started. Mostly margin, because it's in a lot of cases, it's an owner-operated business. The person buying into the franchise is also one of the cleaners at first until they scale out their team. And then I've met a few of these franchisees who now they live in Europe or Africa, and they've got a team here that's just running it, and they're doing the nomadic life, and they've run the whole cleaning business while they're living remotely. This isn't a business that's going to make you a multimillionaire, but this is one of those ones that could replace your middle management, corporate America job where you're making 150 to 300 grand a year. I think this could replace that income, and you could go do it remotely and live somewhere else, and live abroad or live a more flexible lifestyle while having this team of cleaners turning Airbnbs and commercial offices.
Amazing. I know a guy in Northwest Arkansas that does that, and he does very well. Only cleaning Airbnbs.
Airbnbs it's such a good niche to go after, because you can go get the owner's list if you're clever, and that's where I think some of these franchisees are helpful. Again, or franchise options are helpful because they can go get those lists and they have those tools to go scrape all the Airbnb owners and operators and drive you business.
Yeah, and I've been an Airbnb owner, and it seems like once every 3 months I'm looking for a new cleaner. Like, it's just hard to keep a good one. So if you do cold outreach to me at the right time, I'm probably saying yes. But.
Yeah, there is. Me and my brothers have one in northern Wisconsin, and it's like,
oh, nice.
We're remote, as you can imagine, and so finding a good cleaner is so critical. And once they're good,
especially there, yeah,
you don't want to lose them.
Alex, this has been amazing. I think franchising is awesome. It's like a box I've never checked. I think I would make a terrible franchisee, probably a terrible franchisor too. But I think that a lot of people out there, it's perfect for. Like they've tasted white collar. But they want to do something for themselves. Like, they don't want full autonomy. They want some hand holding, but they still want to own their time, own some equity. I think it's a great option for a lot of people out there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Even though I've been more of this kind of tech entrepreneur, I own franchises myself. You mentioned actually the brand that I'm a franchise of earlier in the conversation.
Oh, okay.
And another brand, a golf simulator brand called Another Nine. It was the crumble viral brand that you mentioned that's coming up right now in a different category.
Oh, you're a franchisee there?
Yeah, me and my business partner are developing locations in the Midwest, and I'm here.
That's awesome.
I'm here in North Carolina. So that's the other thing, is you get to a certain stage, you can start. I know guys that started franchising 7 years ago, started with 0 locations. They're up to 120 locations now across Dave's Hot Chicken, Pop-Up Bagels, Marco's Pizza, European Wax. So it's not even just all food. They get the system now. So he's like, I don't have to deal with menu innovation or supply chain or branding or I don't do any of that. The brand does all that. I just need to operate a team, go find sites and get them open. And that's what I'm good. I go raise capital or I borrow capital, and I repeat that. 120 unit franchise system probably does $600 million a year in revenue. So just do the math on. And this guy started from 0 7 years ago. And so this is why I'm, trying to spread the word as much as I can on this. Can be what you want it to be. It can be empire building, or it can be a ones and twosie type thing that kicks off a couple $100,000 a year for you, but still puts you into a better position in life financially. And more importantly, doing something that's fulfilling, rewarding, and yours, not someone else's.
It's a blueprint. It's a blueprint for success. It's proven.
100%.
Just don't screw it up.
Yeah.
Alex, this has been great. I appreciate your time. Where can we find you if we want to learn more?
Yeah, so if you want to check out 4,000 different franchise concepts and check out the AI that helps you match, with the right brand, check out franzi.com. We do provide you with free hands-on one-on-one coaching. Sometimes it's actually me, sometimes it's other folks on our team that are franchisees themselves. So they've been through it, they know what to look for, they know the right lenders to talk to, et cetera. And so we help you from idea to you opening that location, whether it's a service or a retail-based business. So franzi.com. And then we have a podcast called How I Franchise This, where we interview franchisees of all stages and sizes. Some are just getting started. Some have the 100+ unit portfolios and everything in between on how they did it, how they financed it, how they chose the brands, what they would do differently now. And then Alex from Franzi on all channels, Instagram, X, TikTok, LinkedIn is just my name. Tons of franchise content if you want to check it out and learn.
Amazing. And then we have a link to a form where people can learn more about any of these franchise concepts that we've learned about as well, that we'll put in the show notes.
Yeah, check it out. We will prioritize reaching out to you because our franchise advisors are all full to the brim right now with all sorts of people looking at buying businesses. So if you check out the link below, we'll make sure to prioritize reaching out to you.
Okay. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for hanging out on the Koerner Office. Please share this with a friend if you liked it.